The skyline of the city was Amelia Vance's personal jewelry box, laid out on black velvet every evening. From her corner office on the 50th floor, the endless river of headlights and the pinpoint stars of distant windows were not a view. They were a validation. Each light represented a life, a transaction, a data point she could, in some abstract way, command. Her desk was a slab of polished obsidian, holding nothing but a sleek silver laptop and a single, intimidatingly sharp letter opener. The room, like her life, was a monument to minimalist control, a fortress of steel and glass designed to keep the messy, unpredictable world at bay. Tonight, the world was trying to breach the walls. A name glowed on her screen, a ghost from her past made manifest in a stock ticker. Sterling Corp. Richard Sterling. The man who had been her partner in love and business, and who had stolen the latter to shatter the former. His hostile takeover bid was not just business. It was an invasion, a final, sneering attempt to conquer the empire she had built from the ashes he'd left her. She hadn't eaten in 12 hours. Her focus was a laser, burning through financial reports, legal precedents, and shareholder profiles. She was so engrossed she didn't hear the soft squeak of the utility cart until it was right beside her desk. A deep, quiet voice startled her. "Sorry, ma'am, didn't mean to interrupt." Amelia's head snapped up. A man in a gray janitorial uniform stood there, his expression apologetic. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes that seemed out of place in the sterile chill of her office. Before she could utter a dismissive word, his cart snagged on the leg of a minimalist chair. The jolt was slight, but it was enough. A plastic bottle of water, tucked into a side pocket, tipped, spun, and emptied itself in a sickening gush across the gleaming surface of her laptop. The world went silent, then returned with a roar in her ears. A short, sharp hiss emanated from the machine as the screen flickered and died. "No," Amelia breathed, the single word laced with ice and fury. The man's face was a mask of horror. "Oh no, ma'am, I am so sorry. I didn't see. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her voice was low, shaking with a rage that felt volcanic. All the data, the strategies, the battle plans against Richard, all of it was on that machine. "Get out! Just get out!" He didn't move, his gaze fixed on the dead laptop, as if he could will it back to life. "I can fix it," he said, the words quiet but firm. Amelia laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Fix it? You're a janitor. You just erased $1 billion defense strategy. Now get out of my office before I have you fired." He finally looked at her, his kind eyes now holding a flicker of hurt, but also a steady resolve. He carefully unplugged the laptop, his hands surprisingly gentle. "My name is Marcus Thorne," he said softly. "I will bring it back, tomorrow. I promise." He took the laptop and left, leaving Amelia alone in the sudden, profound silence. The puddle of water on her desk, reflecting the city lights like a pool of spilled diamonds. For the first time in years, she felt completely, utterly powerless. The next 24 hours were a special kind of hell. Amelia operated on a loaner tablet, her mind a frantic scramble to recreate fragments of her work. She was short with her board, brutal with her legal team. The entire time, a small, irritating part of her brain was distracted by the janitor's promise. "I can fix it." It was absurd, the height of arrogance. At precisely 9 o'clock the next evening, a soft knock came at her door. Marcus Thorne stood there, holding her silver laptop. He looked tired, but his expression was calm. "I brought it back," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He placed it on her desk, carefully avoiding the spot where the water had spilled. "I had to take the casing off to dry the logic board properly. I also noticed the left hinge was loose, so I tightened that up for you. It shouldn't wobble anymore." Amelia stared at him, then at the laptop. She'd been ignoring the wobbly hinge for 6 months, a minor irritation she never had time to address. She tentatively opened the lid. The screen flickered to life, her desktop appearing exactly as she had left it, the Sterling Corp file front and center. It was working. It was perfect. She was speechless. How did you do this?" "I'm good with my hands," he said with a small, self-deprecating shrug. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, placing it beside the laptop. It was a bird, carved from a single piece of light-colored wood, its wings outstretched as if in mid-flight. The detail was exquisite, each feather delicately etched. "This is for you. A peace offering." Amelia picked it up. The wood was smooth and warm against her cold skin. It was the most beautiful, useless, and utterly human thing she had held in a decade. I don't understand." "I'm sorry about the accident," he said, his sincerity a palpable force in the room. "And I'm sorry for how you're feeling." Her head shot up. "How I'm feeling?" He gestured to the screen, to the name Sterling Corp. "I saw it last night, before the spill. That look on your face. It wasn't just work. That's a battle." Before she could formulate a response, a tiny head peeked around the doorframe. A little girl, no older than 7, with wide, intelligent eyes and 2 long braids, was holding a sketchbook and a fistful of pencils. She didn't say anything, just looked from her father to Amelia. "This is my daughter, Maya," Marcus said, his voice softening instantly. "Maya, this is Ms. Vance. I was just returning her computer." Maya gave a small, solemn nod, her eyes lingering on Amelia for a moment before she retreated behind her father's legs. The image, the strong, gentle father and his silent, watchful child, was a portrait from a world so alien to Amelia's, it might as well have been another planet. "You bring your daughter to work?" Amelia asked, the question coming out sharper than she intended. "She's with me always," Marcus replied, his tone leaving no room for judgment. "It's just us." He gave Amelia a small nod. "I hope the computer works fine. Have a good night, ma'am." He took Maya's hand and they left, their quiet footsteps echoing in the cavernous hallway. Amelia stood there for a long time, staring at the carved bird in her hand. For the second night in a row, her fortress had been breached, not by an enemy, but by a janitor with skilled hands and a silent, observant child. The following week, a strange pattern emerged. Amelia found herself working until exactly 9 p.m., her ears tuned for the squeak of the utility cart. When Marcus arrived, they would exchange a few words. He never overstepped, never lingered, but his presence was a quiet anchor in her turbulent days. She learned he was a voracious reader from the books he'd borrow from the office's free library. He learned she liked her tea black, with no sugar. One evening, she found the courage to ask the question that had been bothering her. "You're not just good with your hands, are you? Fixing that logic board, carving this..." She gestured to the bird, which now sat in the one personal spot on her desk. "That's not a hobby, that's a skill." Marcus stopped wiping down the conference table, his movements thoughtful. He looked over at Maya, who was sitting in a plush visitor's chair, diligently drawing in her sketchbook. "I was an architect," he said, the words landing softly in the quiet room. Amelia blinked. "An architect? What happened?" He took a deep breath, the story residing in a place he didn't visit often. "My wife, Elena, she was a landscape designer. We were going to start our own firm, Thorn and Thorn. We had the whole thing planned out." He smiled, a brief, sad flicker. "Then she got sick, fast. It was aggressive." He paused, his gaze distant. "When she was gone, everything changed. Maya, she just stopped talking. The doctors called it selective mutism, a trauma response. She needed me, all of me. A 90-hour work week at a high-pressure architecture firm wasn't going to work, so I found a job that did." He gestured around the empty office. "This job, the hours are steady, the work is quiet, and she can be with me." Amelia looked from the powerful man polishing a table to the silent child drawing worlds on paper. He had sacrificed his ambition, his entire career, for his daughter. He had given up the very thing Amelia had spent her life clawing for: status, a title, a name on a building, and he had done it without a second thought. "I'm sorry," she said, the words feeling hopelessly inadequate. "Don't be," he said, his voice gentle. "I have her. That makes me the richest man in this building." He looked at Maya, his love for her so potent it seemed to warm the sterile air. The statement hung between them, an unintentional indictment of the very values Amelia's life was built upon. A wave of something she couldn't name, shame, admiration, a profound and aching loneliness washed over her. She, the titan of industry, had never felt so poor. The ritual continued, but it deepened. The 9 p.m. conversations stretched longer. One rainy Tuesday, Amelia looked up as Marcus and Maya entered, both looking damp and chilled. "The cafeteria is closed for floor waxing tonight," Marcus said, a hint of apology in his tone, as if he were responsible for her potential hunger. On impulse, Amelia did something she hadn't done in years. She acted without calculating the outcome. "I was about to order food. Would you and Maya like to share it with me?" A slow, surprised smile spread across Marcus's face. "We wouldn't want to impose." "Please," Amelia said, the word feeling new in her mouth. "I'd like the company." An hour later, the three of them were sitting around her massive conference table, which was now littered with cardboard containers of Thai food. It was the most use the table had seen in months. Maya, after much gentle coaxing from her father, had accepted a small plate of pad see ew, which she ate with a quiet neatness that was mesmerizing. To fill the silence, Amelia had gone to her own office and returned with a new, unopened box of professional-grade watercolor pencils and a pad of thick, textured paper. She'd placed them beside Maya's sketchbook without a word. Maya had looked at the gift, then at Amelia, her wide eyes unblinking for a full 10 seconds before she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of thanks. Now, as they ate, Amelia watched Marcus talk about the principles of cantilever bridges, using 2 forks and a takeout container to illustrate his point. His passion was infectious, his explanations clear and brilliant. She could so easily picture him commanding a boardroom, not pushing a broom. "You miss it, don't you?" she asked softly. He stopped, putting the forks down. "I miss the creation, taking an idea and making it solid. But I get to build other things now." He glanced at Maya, who was now carefully unwrapping the new pencils, lining them up by color. Smaller things, more important things. The next evening, when Amelia arrived at her office, a single sheet of paper was sitting on her keyboard. It was a drawing from Maya. Using the new pencils, she had drawn the wooden bird Marcus had carved, but this one was soaring through a sky of impossible, vibrant blues and purples. It was a sky full of hope, a stark contrast to the dreary, monochrome cityscapes that usually filled her sketchbook. A thank you, rendered in color. Amelia carefully pinned the drawing to the wall, right next to a framed article about her company's IPO. The child's drawing and the testament to her financial success seemed to be at war with one another. A few nights later, the pressure from Richard's takeover bid had become a physical weight on her shoulders. He was attacking her on all fronts: media, shareholders, even trying to poach her lead developer. She was exhausted, the old fury and fear churning inside her. Marcus found her staring at the screen, her face a pale, tense mask. He didn't start cleaning. He just stood by the door, waiting. "Is it him again?" he asked quietly. Amelia nodded, not trusting her voice. She felt a dam inside her begin to crack, the years of held-back pain pressing against it. "His name is Richard Sterling," she finally said, the words spilling out in a rush. "We started our first company together, out of my apartment. It was my code, my algorithm. He was the face, the salesman." She took a shaky breath. "We were more than partners. I trusted him, with my work, with my heart. And when the first big venture capital offer came in, he took it. He had me sign papers I didn't understand, pushed me out, and claimed the entire intellectual property as his own. He built Sterling Corp on my back, on the bones of what he stole from me. This takeover, it's not about business, it's about erasure. He wants to own the last thing I have that's truly mine." She finally looked at him, tears blurring the city lights into a smear of cold fire. She expected pity, or worse, awkward silence. Instead, Marcus's eyes held a deep, profound understanding. He had known loss too. He had known what it was to have your life's plan ripped away. He walked over and stood beside her chair, not touching her, but his presence was a tangible comfort. "He didn't steal your mind, Amelia," he said, his voice a low rumble. "He stole a product. You built all of this." He swept a hand toward the window. "After him. You are the architect of this. He knows that. That's why he's so afraid of you." A warmth spread through her chest, soothing the raw, jagged edges of her old wound. He saw her, not as a CEO or a victim, but as a creator. As if on cue, a news alert flashed in the corner of her screen. "Sterling goes public. Vance Industries lacks the stable leadership for the future." Richard's smug face filled a small window, his words a direct public assault. The ghost was no longer at the gates. He was tearing them down. The battle had just become a war. The next 2 weeks were a blur of corporate warfare. Richard was relentless. He leaked fabricated stories to financial bloggers, questioning Amelia's temperament. He made a spectacular show of courting her head of engineering, sending a car to pick him up for a private lunch. The pressure was immense, a constant grinding assault on her focus and her morale. The only moments of peace were the quiet 20 minutes each night when Marcus and Maya arrived, a small, calm island in her sea of chaos. The breaking point came at the annual City Foundation Charity Gala, the glittering pinnacle of the corporate social calendar. Amelia attended out of obligation, her smile a carefully constructed piece of armor. She moved through the crowd, a queen in her element, shaking hands and making polite, meaningless conversation. Then she saw him. Richard, holding court by the champagne fountain, looking like a wolf who owned the forest. He spotted her and glided over, his smile predatory. "Amelia, you look tense. The pressure getting to you?" "Not at all, Richard," she replied, her voice pure ice. "Just enjoying the sight of so much desperation in one room." His eyes hardened. "Always the fighter. But you can't win this one. You should just take the generous offer on the table. It's more than you deserve." As he spoke, Amelia's gaze drifted past him. Across the ballroom, Marcus was helping a catering assistant clean up a shattered wine glass. He'd told her he was taking an extra shift to save up for a specialist Maya needed to see, an art therapist who had a long wait list. He looked up, caught her eye, and gave her a small, encouraging nod. The simple, private gesture was a lifeline. Richard followed her gaze, his lip curling in a sneer of derision. "Well, well, still fraternizing with the help, Amelia? I always said you had a weakness for strays." He leaned in closer, his voice a venomous whisper. "You build this glass tower, but you can't get the girl from the gutter out of you, can you? He'll be the first thing to go when I take over. I like a clean office." The classist slur, the casual cruelty, the threat aimed at Marcus. It hit Amelia harder than any business tactic. It wasn't just about her company anymore. Richard was trying to contaminate the one clean, good thing that had entered her life. She turned and walked away without another word, the sound of his smug chuckle following her like a disease. Richard was a man who left nothing to chance. He had seen the look that passed between Amelia and the janitor. A connection was a weakness, and Richard Sterling was an expert at exploiting weakness. He hired a private investigator. It didn't take long to get the full picture. Marcus Thorne, ex-architect, single father, sole guardian of a selectively mute child, a man with everything to lose. A week after the gala, Marcus was finishing his shift when 2 stern-faced security guards approached him. "Mr. Thorne, we need you to come with us." They led him to a soulless interrogation room in the building's basement. The head of corporate security, a man with cold, procedural eyes, sat across from him. "A piece of proprietary hardware went missing from the R&D lab on the 48th floor last night," the man said flatly. "A lab you cleaned. We have a warrant to search your personal locker." Marcus felt a cold dread creep up his spine. "I didn't take anything." But he knew it was useless. When they opened his locker, tucked inside his worn backpack was a small, complex-looking prototype chip. It was a plant, so obvious and yet so damning. He was suspended immediately, pending a formal investigation, and, he was told, likely criminal charges. The world tilted on its axis. A criminal record. What would that mean for Maya? That evening, Amelia's private line rang. It was Richard. "I hear you have a little pest problem in your building, Amelia," he said, his voice oozing false sympathy. "Theft of trade secrets. It's a serious felony, especially for a man who is a single parent. Judges tend to look very unfavorably on that sort of thing during custody hearings." The threat, veiled but unmistakable, sucked the air from Amelia's lungs. He was threatening to take Maya away from Marcus. "What do you want, Richard?" she asked, her voice a dead whisper. "It's simple," he said, the triumph clear in his voice. "Call a board meeting. Announce you're accepting my offer. Not a penny more than what's on the table. You do that, and I'll make a call. The evidence against your janitor will misplace itself. The whole unfortunate incident will be forgotten. You fight me." He paused for effect. "And I will personally ensure he is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Your choice, the company or the janitor's life." He hung up. Amelia stared at the phone, her hand trembling. He had cornered her. He had taken her strategic, impersonal war and made it a brutal, intimate hostage negotiation. He was forcing her to choose between the empire she had built to protect herself and the man who had shown her she no longer needed the walls. The next morning, the boardroom at Vance Industries was electric with tension. Amelia had called an emergency meeting at dawn. Her entire board was assembled, along with her top legal counsel. They all wore the same expression: grim, determined, ready for war. They assumed she had found a silver bullet, a ruthless legal maneuver to cripple Richard's bid. They had files and counteroffers prepared. Amelia walked to the head of the table, her face unreadable. She felt a strange calm settle over her. She looked past the expectant faces of her board and toward the small, glass-walled public gallery. Marcus was there, his face pale and drawn. He had come because she had asked him to. Beside him, holding his hand in a fierce grip, was Maya. Amelia took a breath and stepped up to the podium. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady and clear, amplified by the room's microphone. "I know you're all expecting me to unveil our final strategy to fight Richard Sterling's takeover. You're expecting a war. But I'm not here to talk about that." A murmur went through the room. "For the past 15 years," she continued, "I have defined my life and my worth by the success of this company. I built it to be impenetrable. I built it to win. I thought that was the only thing that mattered." She paused, her eyes finding Marcus's in the gallery. "I was wrong." She then laid it all bare. She told them about Richard's phone call. She detailed the blackmail, the planted evidence, the threat against Marcus and his daughter. She didn't spare a single ugly detail. A shocked silence fell over the boardroom. "Richard Sterling thinks he can force me to choose between my company and a man's life," she said, her voice ringing with a newfound authority that had nothing to do with her title. "He thinks my ambition is the only thing I have. He's right in a way. I am ambitious. I'm ambitious for a world where decency isn't a liability. I'm ambitious for a world where powerful men can't ruin innocent people for sport." She looked directly at her board chairman. "Therefore, effective immediately, I am resigning as CEO of Vance Industries." Gasps echoed through the room. "Furthermore," she added, delivering the true killing blow, "I have already entered into a binding agreement to sell my entire controlling interest in this company to the Petrelli Holdings Group, a friendly third party that will vote with this board to block Sterling Corp's acquisition indefinitely. The company is safe." She had sacrificed her throne to save the kingdom. She had given up her own power to neutralize Richard completely. "I will not sacrifice a good and innocent man for a logo on a building," she finished, her voice thick with emotion. "Some things are not for sale." In the profound, stunned silence that followed, a single small voice cut through the air. It was clear and pure as a bell. Maya, who hadn't spoken a word to anyone but her father in 3 years, was standing on her chair, looking right at Amelia. "Amelia," she said, testing the name. Then, with a radiant smile, she said it again, louder. "Thank you." The aftermath was swift and decisive. Richard's scheme, now public knowledge, imploded. The story of his blackmail was on every newsfeed within the hour. His board turned on him, his investors fled, and his reputation was irrevocably shattered. Vance Industries, under the protection of the Petrelli Group and Amelia's hand-picked successor, was secure. But Amelia wasn't there to witness her victory. The moment she stepped down from the podium, she walked out of the boardroom, away from the shocked faces and ringing phones, and straight into the gallery. She didn't stop until she was standing in front of Marcus. Words felt clumsy, unnecessary. The noise of the world faded away, leaving only the three of them in a bubble of quiet understanding. Marcus looked at her, his eyes shining with a mixture of awe, relief, and something deeper, something she now recognized as the mirror of her own feelings. He had seen her sacrifice everything she'd ever worked for, all for him. She had seen him stand tall even when the world tried to break him. He slowly held out his hand. She took it without hesitation. His palm was calloused and warm, and her fingers laced through his as if they were made to be. There, she had lost an empire, a title, a fortune measured in billions, and she had never, ever felt so rich. Together, they walked out of the gleaming skyscraper. Marcus's other hand held Maya's, and Amelia's was held in his. They walked out of the world of glass and steel and into the bright, uncertain sunlight, not as a former CEO and a janitor, but as two people who had found their way home. They didn't have a destination. They just walked, Maya skipping between them, pointing out a flock of pigeons taking flight. For the first time, Amelia wasn't looking at the skyline. She was looking at the life right in front of her. 6 months later, the sun streamed through the newly repaired panes of a greenhouse, illuminating dust motes dancing in the warm air. The greenhouse stood at the edge of a thriving community garden, a riot of green and red and yellow that had been carved out of a neglected urban lot. It was a place of patient, stubborn life. Amelia, her hair tied back in a simple ponytail and her hands smudged with rich soil, gently firmed the earth around a young tomato plant. She wore jeans and a faded t-shirt and a smile that was genuine and constant. A few yards away, Marcus was showing a small group of neighborhood kids how to build a birdhouse, his architect's precision now applied to a simpler, more joyful purpose. They were co-managing the nonprofit that had started the garden, building something together from the ground up. A whirlwind of energy and questions in the form of a 7-year-old girl ran up to Amelia, holding a freshly picked carrot. "Can we give this to Mr. Henderson's rabbit, Amelia? Can we? He said rabbits love carrots more than anything." "Of course we can, sweetie," Amelia said, laughing as she wiped a smudge of dirt from Maya's cheek. The girl's voice was a constant, happy music in their lives, a testament to the healing power of safety and love. Maya scampered off toward the birdhouse project, and Amelia's gaze followed her, finally landing on Marcus. He looked up, his face breaking into a familiar, loving smile. In that look, she saw their shared future, as solid and real as the earth under her fingernails. She had spent a lifetime building a fortress to protect her wounded heart, an empire of cold, hard surfaces. But it was here, surrounded by the messiness of soil and the promise of new growth, that she had finally found her shelter. She had learned that true wealth wasn't an empire you owned, but the people you had to share it with.